listeners, and welcome back to Uber Cinco. If you're returning to the den, mucho gratitude. And if this is your first foray with us, Uber pause to you, compadre. Sorry about that. But this is Uber Cinco, the podcast where we deep dive top fives. I'm Mitch Brinkman, your host for today's festivities, and our matchup today in the den is Brian Ernst versus Nathan Hennepin. Today, our contestants will reveal and defend their top 5 moments of their lives that should have been a Seinfeld episode. Oh, yada yada. Boys, say hello and give the folks something good.
Hello.
Greetings and salutations, everyone.
What's the deal with this episode?
I've just created a new rule in my brain, so...
And I will abide by it.
You know what I was going to say. All right, so this episode, obviously it's going to be Seinfeld heavy. Hope to God you listeners at home spent a good part of your childhood watching reruns on the daily, like some of us did. This
is our second WCIU reference of the series.
Yes. I believe later we're going to have an episode where it's all about Generation Z and how lucky they are. They just have shows at their fingertips and just all the episodes, and you don't have to return to your TV every day between 5 and 6 p.m. Central to catch your favorite comedy. So
yeah, it was 2 episodes of The Simpsons, and then you'd switch over for an episode of Seinfeld, and then you go back for another half hour of The Simpsons. That was how it worked for me pretty much every day from age 10 to 14.
Were there any shows that you would never watch, or were there some, if you stayed for the half hour, you felt bad afterwards? You're like, God, why did I do that?
Yeah, they started near the end of that. They started sneaking in original run of King of Queens. That one I didn't think lived up to the potential.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And Matlock really didn't appeal to a 10 to 14-year-old me.
Yeah. Also, I think there was a 6-week period where they tossed wings in there. The Thomas Hayden Church Airport vehicle, if you remember that one.
So much drama in a tiny regional airport. It was incredible. Well, that's fantastic. All right. Well, hey, if this is your first time in the Uber Cinco Den with us, let us wake you out of hibernation with a quick rundown of the rules.
Each player in the den has spent time with today's topic, arranging their top 5 answers in order of importance. Those answers have been submitted to the host, who will moderate the game, awarding points to the player with the most poignant answer.
Starting with their number 5 choice, we will move up the ranks until we reach each of their top answers. But if both contestants happen to have the same answer on their list, well, we have an Uber stare-down.
You will hear the official Uber Cinco siren, and both players must reveal their answer and what number they ranked their submission. An Uber stare-down is all or nothing, with one player earning 3 points. After all answers have been read, the host will reveal the final score.
And as a reminder, don't forget to stick with us until the end of the show, where I, Mitch Brinkman, will give you my Fast 5 send-off, where I'll rattle off the definitive list of the top 5 Brad Pitt hairstyles. And of course, as host, I'm entitled to institute a house rule for today's game, which is inspired by my father, who had the quickest hands this side of the mighty Mississippi when it came to change being left about. He'd say, "You can't take care of it? I will. Cha-ching." So any details of your stories not cared for, moments you glossed right over with a yada yada, will be automatically dinged a point. With that, let's do it. Let's start with Nathan. Do you want to go first?
I'd love to.
Thank you. Start us off.
All right. This first story, this goes back to my undergraduate days. We're in the summer school session. The way classes were structured was it was only a few weeks, and it was sort of like a seminar thing. So it was 5-hour-long classes, only a handful of them accumulated for your grade. I needed a psychology class. I signed up the day before, probably the night before, online, got registered, got the room, whatever. I didn't even have time to go buy the books. So I stroll in late at 9 a.m.
How late was that? Was that a half hour late?
Yeah, about half an hour late.
Okay.
So I stroll in, and the guy is like, all right, what's your name? And so I give him my name, and he says, "Oh, you're not on the register." And he's like, "But did you just like sign up real recently? He's like, yeah, like a couple other people, same thing. Don't worry about it. We'll straighten it out later. I'm like, cool. So we sit down, we get started. It's real dry, real boring, sort of droning on and we get through 2 hours of it. And then we break up. We're ready for the first assignment, which is going to be a big group project. So there's 4 of us, spend about 90 minutes divvying up what we're doing. We have our responsibilities. I don't have the book yet, so I'm sharing with this girl, and we're doing all the work, whatever. And then we take like a half-hour lunch break, and she lends me her book because I'm like kind of running behind on what we're doing. And so I go check my notes while I'm on the break because something just wasn't sitting right with me. And I realized that the class I'd been sitting in was Psych 207. And I had signed up for Psych 208. And so I'd been in the wrong class the whole time. And I'd been working on this. I've been doing 25% of work for a group project. And the shame factor, because it was just too much for me. I was like trying to think, okay, what am I going to say to these people about the 25% of work I've done? What I'm going to say to the professor? What am I going to say to the other class professor that I'm supposed to be in? So I ran back hoping everybody was still on their break, and they were. And I ran in and I left the girl's book by her seat. And then I just disappeared into the ether, never to be heard from again. And so looking back on it now, I realize I probably could have just dropped the first class and then tried to like sign up for the second one since I'd already gotten started, or maybe they would have worked with me, but I was too embarrassed. I felt like it was channeling my inner George Costanza. I would rather have just thrown everybody else under the bus and instead of facing up to the shame of my own shortcomings. And so I dropped the other class and pretty much just spent the next 3 weeks doing nothing but playing video games and going to play basketball. So it was and instead of being embarrassed for literally 2 minutes, I wasted 6 weeks of my life.
This is eerily reminiscent of you taking the bike to the pub in North London too, where you're like, instead of just like locking it up somewhere or just being like, yeah, I didn't know, and then drink, you just like disappeared into the ether and were never heard of from again.
Yeah, well, with that one, I will defend myself slightly more because if something had happened to the bike, I would have been financially liable.
Sure.
But with this, I had found the perfect crime and I faced no consequences whatsoever, which would have made George very proud.
You weren't financially liable for the 6 weeks of classes that.
No, I didn't have to pay for any classes because I didn't take any.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, also, you left out a detail. What college did you attend?
This was DePaul University.
Oh.
Here in Chicago, Illinois.
Whoa, that's where I went.
Me too. Weird.
Wait, what? Seriously?
How do
we all go to the same college? Holy wait, is that where we met?
Yeah, we met literally the first day. Yeah.
Oh, God, that's right. Oh, that's right. Okay. Now, okay, so this was the summer after your first year, correct? So
this was summer after junior year, maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was curious if
it was later because I wasn't living in the dorms anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For the listeners at home, Nathan and I were roommates freshman year of college. So I was curious if that was okay. Okay, I'm putting the pieces together here in my brain. Now, as a Seinfeld episode, do you think George, this would have been like 3/4 of the episode, he's in the class, he realizes, and he's like in the bathroom trying to determine which class he drops, or if he just, just snakes out of there and disappears completely? I
think he would have, if it was George, you would have seen the struggle, and then you would have seen him make the worst possible decision, which is probably what I did. But then George would have gotten caught at the end.
Oh yeah,
there would have been consequences for George.
And the young lady's textbook would have definitely been stolen. It would not have been there.
Yeah,
that would have been gone. Yeah,
that would have never made it back to the classroom. But she would have caught him with it. Maybe a week later. Maybe he was trying to use it for a different class. Yeah. So I got away a little bit better than George, but I still felt very much like him in the moment.
All right. Well,
which isn't a pleasant experience.
With that shame at number 5, Brian, let's move to your shame. I don't know if it's shame. Let's hear it.
Not necessarily shame, more just
good.
more anxiety ridden.
Okay.
This is my number 5 is the first time I tried parallel parking on Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago.
Ooh,
so
that's a busy area.
Yeah. So this is the real life scenario. Before I mention anything about Seinfeld, for those of you listeners who are not familiar with Chicago, Milwaukee Avenue runs diagonally through what is mostly a grid system city. And there's a lot of businesses and street parking in many corridors here. So a lot of people park there to either go to a bar, coffee shop, restaurants. There's a lot of that stuff. But the most important part to understanding why this made my list is because when I was a young driver, first trying to park and meet folks in the city, I was driving a 2003 Ford Windstar minivan. So trying to get this boat into a very precise parallel parked parking spot on a busy street where there's just people just waiting behind you and you have to cause them an inconvenience. And there's just a few moments where you had to stop, retry, but a lot more moments where I'd have to just completely abandon that spot completely and move on somewhere else because I completely misjudged how big my car is.
And also your old red, I don't know if that's what you called your Windstar, but it had a booty on it. It had a keister going on back there. So
not only did it have a big booty because it was a huge minivan, but the way the front was designed was the windshield. When you're looking out the windshield, you didn't see the hood of the car. So while you were driving, it was like you always just had a view of the road. So you never knew where the nose ended either. You couldn't like sit up in your chair and be like, okay, I can guesstimate I got about a foot left. No. It was all guess. It was just like much like the Toyota Camry story we had a few weeks ago. There's no cameras on this. You got to rely on your mirrors and just hope, if you don't have a friend, really hope you're not bumper butting anybody there. So this real life scenario reminded me of either Kramer double parking on the street and a combination of George trying to move the Frogger machine across the street.
Oh, yeah.
So if I take two of those situations, I put them together. I picture George in my position, one, either trying to find the perfect spot, like the spot's not good enough for him, so he has to move on to find something closer because he thinks something's opening up, or he's either on a date trying to get close to the restaurant and he's just not satisfied with his park job and needs to impress his date. Like that's kind of how I see George in this scenario.
I think this is a direct quote from George Costanza. I said I'm a good parker. I never said I'm a good driver. I'm a good parker.
Why wouldn't George also, just pay for valet?
Come on.
I can definitely see George getting involved with a cyclist on Milwaukee Avenue because it's a pretty, for me, a main thoroughfare. It's pretty tight, and there's definitely some generous bike lanes on either side.
There's no lane. There's no bike lane. I was here first.
One of my other favorite things about that minivan was the license plate saying RCBAE, which you put because, as everybody knows, RC Cola is so bay.
I mean, you nailed it on the head. That's exactly what it was named after. We're big RC Cola fans. So that is my number 5. Anxiety-ridden parking on a busy city street with a minivan.
Well, so I feel like you kind of yada-yada'd it there. What did you get in the spot, or how many?
Well, of course,
tries did it take?
I got in a spot, but I mean,
you got in a spot.
This is multiple events in which this happened. I mean, this is not like.
Oh, okay. This is just a general form of anxiety for you as a parker within the city of Chicago,
especially during this very specific moment of my driving career. It was probably been late teens, early 20s. After attending DePaul and starting to meet a few of you fine folks and being like, hey, let's meet at this place. You guys could either take a bus or a train because you could. Me, I'm like, all right, I'll come in from the suburbs and find a good old...
Did you have a system? Because you got to have a system when you're parking.
Well, my system was find a place that was at least 2 or 3 car lengths big and then park there. That was my system.
That can backfire on you. I remember one time when I was in undergrad, one of the DePaul buildings is down in the loop. So I was standing on the elevated train platform looking down at somebody trying to parallel park the stanchion that holds up the platform is there. So it's a little tricky, but this guy had a good 2.5 lengths of his car, and he kept backing in and backing out and backing in and backing out. And he was just frustrated. I could see him like pounding on the steering wheel and just like, wiping sweat from his brow. And there were a few of us started watching this debacle, and it went on for about a good 5 minutes. And finally he got in and he got out and he slammed the door of his car and just like took a huff and looked at it with his hands on his hips. And then we all started applauding him. And he just turned up and both middle fingers right at us.
Well, 2 middle fingers times 2 equals 4. So that's a transition, Nathan. Give us your number 4, please.
Nice, the old mathematical transition.
We're not going to get any points for round 5? What is this?
Oh, that's right. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
I worked hard.
Okay.
I worked hard on this. I deserve recognition from the board.
Sure. I'm gonna give you both the same because you both went George here, and George is a 2, but he thinks of himself as a 1 deep down. So I'm gonna give you guys both a 1. So.
Oh, number 4 for me.
Yes,
right.
yes. Take it away, pal.
This one it's more if Seinfeld, if there was like a prequel series where you could see the Seinfeld crew at college getting a little raunchy and rowdy. So this was being smuggled out of the dorms by my cousin Andrew on a wild weekend at Western Illinois. So I was with 2 of my friends who were both named Ben. And Ben 1 and I were underage. We were still 20 years old.
Okay.
And drinking in the dorms is a big no-no. So other Ben was overage, and we had been out and we had had a few drinks. So we definitely were not above board from a legal sense. And then we came back to there was like a suite. So you had one room, and then there was a middle common area, then another bedroom, so shared by 4 or 5 people.
And now, when you say suite, there's a hot tub, towel service. I mean, what sort of suite are we talking here?
I used the word very generously.
Oh, you did? Okay,
It's an older dorm, and so in the hallways there were like the large communal men's and women's bathrooms.
Okay,
because the women were on the other side and men's bedrooms on the other side.
So like a cinder block former prison /
it was
like meat drying facility.
Cinder blocks was exactly the architecture.
Okay.
So we get back, and the middle room is just going crazy. People are just getting real wild and raunchy, and there's just beer cans and vodka bottles just all over this place.
Ooh.
And then like a noise complaint happens, and then there's the dreaded knock at the door. And so we scramble into our respective bedrooms, and I'm like hiding under a bed, like just so because the door opens a little bit and the RAs are out there. And so Ben, whose room it actually was, is answering the door, and she's like, "Well, there was a noise complaint. Like we need to see what's going on." And he's like, "Well, no, you're just not going to." And they're like, "No, but I am, because this is how this system works." He's like, "Well, we weren't partaking in this, so no, like I'm not gonna let you in and see like if you see something in the common room, like, but I'm not responsible for it, so no." And then he manages to hold off the RA for just long enough. And while this is happening, my cousin Andrew is like calling me, trying to figure out where we are. And so I call him and I whisper and I explain what's going on. And I'm like, well, we're kind of trapped here. I don't know what's going to happen. Ben might get written up, whatever. Well, then the situation goes from bad to worse, because the RA had gotten in through the other side, and she had seen what was going on. Drinking in the dorms was forbidden.
Who let her in?
The other side. She managed to get in.
You never let the police or the RAs in. All right, just everyone listening out there. Okay.
So she comes around and is knocking on the door again, and Ben is still just putting up a fight. And in the meantime, Andrew calls me and says, "There's police showing up." So the RA had called the police. So at this point, I'm like, "Oh God, we're screwed." And Andrew's like, "No, we're not giving up. We are getting you out of here." And so Andrew like sees the police, like they're not taking it too seriously, and they're kind of dragging as they're coming in. So Andrew sneaks up through one of the entrances into the dorm. And he comes and finds the dorm and he's like, all right, I know where they're coming in. You guys follow me. And so we sprint down the hallway and he has us duck inside of one bathroom and we're like up here and we hear the police walking by the other. And then he moves us into another bathroom into the other hallway. And then we hear the police go by there. And he's like, all right, down this exit. And we just run for it. And the police can hear us at this point. He's like, just floor it, guys. And we go down the stairs. And so we disappear into the night. And, me and Ben 1, Ben 2, and Andrew all got away completely scot-free.
Wow.
And in this story, I think that my cousin Andrew would definitely be playing the role of Kramer. Just the fearlessness and the always being able to ass backwards, either fall into good fortune or get out of good fortune, suffer no consequences. And unfortunately, I feel like I was more of the Newman, sort of haplessly... by my own bad decisions, finding myself to need to be rescued by more pivotal characters in the show.
Wow. How good did that 2 a.m. slice of greasy pepperoni taste that night?
It was pretty amazing. Yeah. It was a real rush of adrenaline getting out of the dorm.
Yeah.
There. This was, we felt like we had really beat authority. We had won a major victory for the common people on that fateful night.
I can imagine the next morning, the scene at the coffee shop too, where like the one time they let Newman sit with them at the table is after this triumphant escape from the police.
Yeah, that's right. There would be a camaraderie that would then write the punchline, the tagline of the episode before the bow, 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 bow comes in for the credits is Newman putting his foot in his mouth and ruining the whole vibe, which resets everything back for the next episode. So the dynamics can be played out once again.
Mm-hmm. Classic. Wow. All right. Well, Brian, that moves us. Let's sneak right into your number 4 then.
So my number 4 is the time I went on a first date in which she brought a friend along that I was unaware would be attending. That's
a move. Was that a power move? What was that?
I have a theory later on as to why I think this happened, but. So this is at the beginning of my online dating career, just dipping my toe into the waters there in my early 20s, trying to go on some dates. And
okay. Is this Hinge? Is this OkCupid? What is
this?
Tinder?
This is probably an OkCupid area of time here. So this is the area of your life where you go on a lot of first dates that never lead to a second date. That's kind of the time period we're working in here. Okay. I feel like a lot of these dates didn't move on to a second one, mainly because of my lack of confidence at the time. But this particular one sticks out because it ended up being an unwanted threesome showing up at this restaurant that was very confusing at the time. Wrong choice of word.
Yeah,
but
I was like, whoa, Brian,
you know what I mean?
Mention that?
So,
okay.
We met at Miller's Ale House in Lombard, Illinois. And then I got a table near the front, so I was there very early so she could see me when she came in. But then she walks through the door with somebody else. And she is dressed for the date. Like, look like we're ready to go out for dinner. Her roommate is dressed in gray sweats.
Okay. Interesting.
And they both sit down at my table, and I get introduced to the both of them. And I'm a little dumbfounded. I'm like, okay. She kind of just introduces her roommate, but never explains why she's there this whole time.
Did her pictures on OkCupid include this other person?
No, not at all.
Okay.
So this is a completely brand new person to me. Like, I recognize one, but she comes in with somebody else, and I'm like, what's going on?
Also, can I just mention the fact that you made it a point to sit near the front so she could see you right away? That's pretty nice. I don't feel like most people would do that.
Well, I asked for it. I'm like, especially it's like if you're waiting in the lobby, they didn't have like a really nice lobby area, like very, very small. It was like just a little host stand. Yeah. So I feel like there was like a booth that was facing the front door. So if like I sat there, it'd be like a quick hello right here.
Yeah. also the quick escape route for you if needed,
which I should have used, but I didn't as we continue here. So it was obviously awkward from the get-go, but I was also very hungry, so I wasn't going to leave the restaurant because I'm like, I'm here. I'm going to at least get some nachos. I'm not leaving without nachos.
So no quick escape is happening because nachos.
That's the priority right now.
Yeah.
So this is coming up about a decade since this happened. So I'm trying to, a lot of the details are starting to become a little bit fuzzy, but I do remember like just feeling guilty about the roommate, like not being a part of the conversation. So I remember like any question I would ask to the date, I would like turn and be like, so what do you think?
Oh, wow.
Like, what do you do? Like, just like, remember just trying to have this first date conversation with two people just to not be mean to the person who was brought along that doesn't look like she wants to be here.
This is a direct line again to you choosing the table that's most easily found. You're just, you were a nice boy. Sorry, keep going.
A nice boy. And I should have, very bad at recognizing red flags. So,
Are there more red flags coming?
Not particularly, but it was. I just didn't want this other person to feel like a third wheel because she seemed like she was dragged here. So my theory as the night went on was maybe the date was just worried about meeting guys alone for a first date, which is like a totally legitimate concern.
Absolutely.
But like, just give me a heads up. Like, hey, it's like,
sure.
I usually don't go on dates alone just because I obviously don't know what's going to happen. So I'm like, sure, bring her along. Let's just go get something to eat. I would have been totally fine if I would like got the heads up. But needless to say, this was our only date. This was our only meeting. So I see this as a Seinfeld episode where Elaine sets Jerry up on a blind date with one of her coworkers, and then one of those coworkers brings a roommate. And then later on, the argument that Jerry and Elaine have to have at Monk's the next day is Jerry being upset that he was put in a situation where he had to pay for 3 meals and got no sex. That would be like, what's going on here, Elaine? But like, that's pretty much how I attribute it to Seinfeld.
Well, and even if it's not first date sex, it's like what, third date, fourth date. So then instead of just 8 meals, you're buying 12 meals. And that's already. That's 150% more money I'm spending on food before before the top of the mountain is found.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay, hold on. All right, so why not just sit at another table? Like why?
Like if this was her true reason for bringing her, like that person should have just gone to the bar,
right? Yeah,
like just
you can have someone there.
Walk in separately, go to the bar. I mean, you would have seen that it was just like, all right, there's just a guy ordering nachos. He's not a threat. So but
perhaps your date was someone who likes to put pressure on people and wanted to see how you would operate in this situation.
Yeah.
Like put into a weird situation, see how you handle yourself. So.
Oh, so she was possibly a sociopath.
Or an experimenter. I don't know.
And I feel like I handled it well. I mean, I stayed and I made conversation. So I feel like that's a passing grade, but who knows?
Did at any point during the date, did you think about switching the two women in your mind? Like, okay, now I'd rather be dating this other person?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, all right.
No. Based on the attitude of the person in sweats, like they were also eating more of the food than anybody else at the table. So I was like, they were just like, they were just there and just like taking advantage of the situation when I was trying to be nice.
And so did you end up paying for all 3?
I paid and I left, and then I never talked to them again.
Wow. How many times during the meal did you think, this son of a bitch person is eating most of the food here? Like did it like knock you off your convo game at all?
At least once or twice. I was just like, okay, that was the side of the appetizer plate that I was going to go for next, and it's no longer there because I was having a conversation with the actual date. Yeah. And you ate my appy portion. What's going on here?
I can totally see like Jerry holding a fork up to his mouth, and then he sees her go for it, and the Jerry Seinfeld expression where he's just frozen in time, looking at that happening.
Yeah. So that's my number 4.
Wow. Now, what was there? Did you receive any communication later from the young lady at all, or no?
I have no idea. I do not remember like anything after that night is like completely wiped from my brainscape.
Okay. Interesting. That's I've never heard of someone bringing along a second person without telling them, and also having them sit at the table as an independent auditor, I guess, in a way.
It's just a weird thing, right? I was like, I didn't feel like I was the one, like I'm not the fish out of water here. This is a very strange situation.
Okay, guys, those are great number fours. Nathan, I love thumbing my nose at authority during college. That was one of my favorite things. RAs especially. We had our own run-ins with them at DePaul.
We did. Well, those will come up in a future episode for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course. But I was going to give you 3 points, but after hearing Brian's story, the singularity of this experience just blows me to the moon. That's a saying, right? Blows me to the moon. I think so. So Nathan, I'm going to give you 2, Brian 3 for that one. And Brian, you scored 3, so give us your third on your list.
First of all, I'm so happy that I was able to blow you to the moon.
Yeah, let's see if you can. Maybe you can whisk him around the sun on this one.
All right. So this number 3 is a weird one here. So I was working for a boutique film production company at the time that this situation happened. We were tasked with doing some sort of corporate video shoot. We needed to get a walk and talk of the beverage company CEO walking through a West Side neighborhood, basically introducing some sort of charity initiative that they were going to be doing. So It already had like a bunch of weird signals, like we actually have to go to this neighborhood you deem not great to put you
problematic.
It just seemed just a little tone deaf from the beginning. So either way, this day started where me and a couple of the other people who were on the crew showing up to meet at the company first. We go to the boardroom and we're just going to walk through what's going to happen today. And there is a security guard there that we've never met. I think he's an ex-cop, whatever. Either way, he asks, we were told that there was going to be a security guard there. And then he asked us, he's like, did you call the police to notify them that we're going to be filming in that neighborhood? And I was like, no, I thought you were security. And that little line back to him set him off. And he was just like, you got to do your job so I can do my job, sort of thing. Long story short, my number 3 is they got security for the CEO and nobody else while they were putting us all into a neighborhood they all deemed unsafe.
Wow.
So there was one security guard just for this guy. And I have to relay all this information back to the producer who's not there, being like, what kind of situation are we in right now? What is happening? Are we unsafe? If they deem him unsafe, why didn't they hire security for everyone? But either way, at the end of this meeting at the top of the morning, it was very clear to us that the security guy's only concern was the CEO. And he basically told us that we were on our own. It's like, keep your head on a swivel, but I'm here for him. And it was like, all right, cool. Let's start the day. So how I attribute this to Seinfeld is I picture Jerry getting hired on a commercial where he is not top of the call sheet, or he's doing a USO show overseas and there's not enough security for him. These are the 2 situations I could see a stand-up comedian being in. But for one reason or another, Frank Costanza has had to step in as his acting manager or agent during the situation. So picture Frank Reynolds in the Shyamalan episode of It's Always Sunny looking after everybody. Frank Costanza as his guard trying to figure out, why doesn't my client have this or that? But Frank Costanza trying to find security for Jerry in an unwieldy situation is an episode I am all in for.
Well, now, and I have to ask, obviously it was all just fine, right? You just shot it and it was...
Everything was fine. It was literally... Okay. It was Garfield Park.
Oh, yeah. That's
like, it was fine.
Yeah.
It was like... and they were calling it the South Side. It's the West Side.
Oh, boy.
2, even if you were that far south on the South Side, you still would have been like above Sox Park in terms of the distance away from their corporate headquarters. Like, that's not the South Side. It goes into the 120, 130th blocks or whatever. It goes really far, even farther than that, actually. So it's like, that's not the South Side. What? You're wrong in so many levels here. You're completely tone deaf. And
can we ask who this company was? Can we drag him through the mud a little bit?
I'm not going to put that out there. That's
okay.
I'm going to be a good boy.
Well, I just love this too, because, like soda companies, their first charity should be, we're paying to so you don't have to drink our product anymore, right? Shouldn't that be the first thing they do?
Well, you would think.
Because sodas just destroy your body from the inside out.
Yeah, so it was just an odd situation from the get-go. And the fact that they're like, yeah, we're providing security, not for you. Like, okay, cool. Thanks.
Well, and thankfully you have a conceal and carry. I mean, that's, you keep multiple guns on you.
Yeah,
at
but
once.
they're all Nerf guns. So
oh yes.
but I do have the proper license for them.
But in the time it takes to get a suction dart off your forehead, you can really get out of there pretty quick.
It's like a disorienting effect. It's just like, did I just get hit with a Nerf gun? Like, there's no time to react and fire back or get tackled or stabbed because they're like, this guy brought a Nerf gun to a gun/knife fight. This is impressive.
So this wasn't for the parent company that owns Nerf and this soda. You just happen to have Nerf guns.
Well, yeah, that's just
okay.
They're not affiliated with Uber Cinco or this beverage company. It's just
okay.
I like Nerf guns.
But also Nerf, if you do want to sponsor Uber Cinco, we would warmly welcome you to the den. Nathan?
That's Nerf and soda. Like, that sounds like all of my favorite Nickelodeon commercials when I was a kid.
Those were the first two building blocks of any great birthday party up until you're about 10 years old. You're like, okay, we need soda and we need Nerf guns. What else? Because you don't always need cake.
No.
Actually, maybe pizza. Pizza you always need as well.
For sure.
Pizza, Nerf guns, and RC Cola because it is so bae.
I demand the royal crown for my 7th birthday. With that, Nathan, let's move on to your number 3 on your list, please.
All right. So this goes back, I think, like 2012. I had a job at a corporation. It was a medical association, and I was placed just as an administrative assistant up on the very top floor, the executive area.
Ooh la la.
All the big wigs, and that also included the like sort of executive conference room, like a big area. It had maybe 10 large tables in, so they would have the buffets or whatever before the big board meetings and so on. So I have trouble sleeping. My body's very adverse to caffeine. So there were a lot of days when I would get into work and I would just be pretty wiped out. So I worked the 4 or 5 hours before my lunch break, and I would just drop off into the little dining area, and I would just kind of lay myself down because I knew nobody was coming in there if there wasn't an event, and just kind of relax and maybe get 10-15 minutes of shut eye before I came back and was ready to go for the afternoon. But the problem would be if I was needing a little cat nap and there was a convention or conference or whatever happening. So that was the day that this happened. So I went down to the second floor of this building where there was an even bigger space. And it was kind of like a circular thing. It kind of wrapped around because the elevators were in the center of the building. So this floor, everything kind of wrapped around.
This sounds like an international style building where essentially from the outside you can see the structural supports of the building in a way. So
like the first 2 floors you could, yeah.
Okay.
You can tell you're the architect's son of the group.
Oh, thank you. Keep going. Oh, shucks.
Yeah. But so I kind of found a place. There's more foot traffic down on the second floor, more of a common area, but I find a place that's pretty secluded. And there were the tables sort of had the extenders and then the wings, and then they would drop down like to the floor. And so I decided I was going to climb underneath one of these tables.
I was just about to ask, are you sleeping on the floor or on the tables normally? And do you have a blanket? Is there a pillow?
No.
Do you hide those somewhere?
Just relaxing out, stretching the spine out, nice, even flat surface.
On the table or on the floor?
No, on the floor.
On the floor. Okay.
Yeah. So, but at this point, I'm under the table, and I'm laying under the table, nice and secluded.
And you're like this. There's nothing wrong with this. This is just a normal workplace.
I was terrified, but
okay.
I was exhausted. I just needed to get off, to lay down for a second, and then I start hearing some footsteps, and I think, well, this isn't good. And then I see like a pair of high-heeled shoes, and they arrive maybe 6 feet away from where I am. And then they stop. And I'm waiting and I'm holding my breath. And I don't know how I am going to get out of this one. And then all of a sudden I just hear, yes. And I'm like, what? And so eventually I figured out she's on the phone. And so I'm like, I don't know how long this conversation's going to go. Please, whatever. Just can I hear okay, goodbye. Thanks for calling, anything. And I'm sitting there and I'm trying not to breathe too heavily. And I'm wearing a necklace, and I can start to feel it shifting and shifting a little bit more. And then it falls and makes the slightest of sounds. But then I hear this woman stop and say, hang on, I gotta go. And she like shifts a little bit, and I can't see what she's doing, but I know I'm in trouble.
Now, okay, and the wings of the table, they don't go all the way down to the ground. Like
they leave like an inch or maybe 2 inches.
So she gets down. Okay, all right, sorry.
No, she doesn't bend down.
Okay.
I think she just like maybe
she can just tell someone's there.
Yeah, or maybe like at the top where the wings, come down. There's a little gap or something,
Sure.
And she saw enough where she believed there was a human being hiding under this table.
Sleeping on.
Oh my God.
So this woman starts to. I see her like walk away quite quickly, and so I think of something real quick, and I crawl out the table opposite way, and it's a circular thing, and I sprint. I've never moved so fast in my life. Around, she's going counterclockwise. I start going clockwise. I get to the edge. I stop, take a deep breath, and then just walk carefully. And I see her coming around, and I say, "Hey, are you okay? What's wrong?" And she's real flustered, and she's like, I don't know. I think something really weird just happened. I think there is somebody hiding in that room. I said, wait, what? What are you talking about? And she says, well, I just maybe under a table or something. I said, well, hang on, let's go take a look. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be fine. So then I led the search to look for myself. And I'm looking under every table, and I'm like, well, there's nobody here. I'm like, do you want me to go talk to security or something? Do you want me to, and she's like, well, I don't know. Are you sure? Well, anyways, despite my most valiant efforts, I was never brought to justice.
You devious boy.
Did this lead to a promotion at all? Like from her, did she recommend you to anyone to move up?
No, but afterwards she's like, oh, I don't. She's like, I was having a stressful day. I just must have been seeing things or hearing things. But thanks for looking, And then we went on our separate ways, and I never saw her again.
But then you did an about face. And your necklace made a noise as you walked away, and then she turned around.
Oh no! I hid my necklace. Just I don't think she saw it or would have known.
Oh.
But yeah, I dropped it under the shirt. I was like, I need to.
That now, see, I was thinking about the necklace too. That's pretty close to a yada yada. I don't know. That's a good detail you left out there, partner.
Oh dear. I snuck it in right at the last minute.
Okay.
I was, quick thinking at the very last minute, just like in that situation.
This is a great example of some of the most, I'd say, non-evil, but also very effective gaslighting examples I've ever heard. This is straight out of a movie. This is something that, this is a George moment, right? And this is only George.
Nobody but George would have found himself in this. It would have gone much further. George would have ended up having to report this to security.
Yeah.
And then they go to the tapes, and then he's spotted staggering out from under the bill and having to explain why he's under a table.
Yankee Stadium security footage, seeing him sprint out from underneath the table.
And it goes all the way up to Mr. Steinbrenner and George, wait, you could come sleep in my couch in my office. You don't need to sleep under a table. What are you thinking? I want my scouts fully rested. And then at the end, it would end up with George getting a couch in his because Steinbrenner has money to burn and be very refreshed. I want you refreshed after your lunch break.
Wow. Okay. Let me. You've escaped the yada yada deduction, and also I'm giving you an extra point for the first impression that I really liked of a Seinfeld character. So I'm gonna give you an extra point for that, which would give you 5 points. But I can't award 5. So Nathan, I'm gonna give you 3.
I'll take it.
And Brian, I'm going to give you 2 for your soda tail. So and that brings us to let's go to Brian for number 2.
For my number 2 here, I have the time that Saudi royalty was in attendance at an IMAX screening that we were at.
Wait, hold on. This involves a movie?
This involves a movie.
Hit the alarm. For this Uber stare down, Brian, you have mentioned something that involves a movie, and Nathan's number 1 also involves a movie. So explain, both of you introduce your number 2, and for Nathan, your number 1, and then we're going to go with Brian to start defending his number 2 first.
All right. So I think, Mitch, you'll remember this. I think you were with me at this screening.
I was.
So obviously we were in film school, and one of the perks we like to take advantage of was free screenings. Why not? You get to see things early, don't have to pay. Great stuff. So this particular screening was interesting because a student at DePaul was actually in the film and involved in the production. And this was Arabia in IMAX, voiced by Helen Mirren. And I don't remember much about the film other than it being a little like propaganda-y.
I would say film is a very loose term in this. There was no story. There was no setup.
It's also 30. It got a 39-minute runtime, like those other weird IMAX movies. So it felt like it was mainly financed to showcase Saudi Arabia trying to modernize, update its longstanding laws and things like that. That was like the reason why it was allowed to be filmed. Yeah, it was
definitely a commercial. Yeah, it was a commercial.
So,
yeah.
But at the end of the screening, it was revealed that there was a Saudi princess in the audience. And I remember when they were asking questions to the audience afterwards, she got up and said a negative comment. And I think it was regarding something around women being allowed to drive. And I think that they were talking about that the film didn't tackle that the law was trying to be changed. And in the film, they said that women were not allowed to drive. And she stood up and was just like, no, that's being changed. And I don't like that this is in the movie. She said something along those lines. But then I went back and I researched. We saw this movie in 2010. That law didn't take effect until 2017. So I think those negotiations were taking obviously a long time. So I don't know if I'm remembering her comment wrong in any way, but like either way, us knowing that she was a Saudi princess, watching a film about Saudi Arabia and they asking her what she thought of it and it being completely negative just made the room extremely uncomfortable.
That was a very weird experience. Very odd.
So I picture this as being Elaine being brought to this screening, then falling asleep during the movie because there's no plot. But then she wakes up at the end, and in our Seinfeld tale, I think our prince or princess playing this role would say something extremely backwards or horrific, like something that like takes Saudi thinking backwards as opposed to moving it forward. And because Elaine just woke up and she sees that it's a princess down there, she's like, no, this woman needs to be heard. Let her be heard. Everyone's booing, blah, blah, blah. She just takes her side, not knowing what she's arguing. And just Elaine accidentally agreeing with an outdated statement just in the name of listen to her would be a completely great Seinfeld episode.
So are you saying you're Elaine and I'm Jerry?
I think I'm the guy. We were both Elaine in the situation. We were both brought by Jerry is the ticket in the scenario.
Yeah. Okay. yeah.
So we were both just kind of thrusted. We did not know what this was going to be about. I remember rumors being put around school like, oh my God, somebody got to work with Helen Mirren. And then we watched the movie and we were just kind of like, huh, interesting.
Yeah, never did it become more clear to me that if you have a lot of money, it can make it seem like you have talent or are good at something.
It was just an odd experience. It was a super odd experience.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, but I was real heated that whole time. I was like, this is absolute bullshit. This is not a film. They should not have brought us here for this.
Yeah.
This is just to pump up the numbers, to make it look like people give a crap about this propaganda commercial we just watched. But
you were angry. You were an angry boy.
I was not happy. Also, it was just boring. It was all boring because it was just like, look at this great university we just spent $300 million on. Now we're the best in the world. And I was like, you don't have an equal society. There's one half your population that cannot fully participate. This is bullshit. I think like the whole time during the movie, I was like, Brian, this is horseshit. Women aren't allowed to do anything. This is such horseshit, you know?
Yeah.
So, as mentioned before, justice runs through my blood in public situations. So.
You shut down RAs and you stand up for women's rights. You always have, and you always will.
I can always do better, but in that moment, you know, I wasn't yelling it. I wasn't like, you know, getting tons of people on my side. I was just trying to get Brian on my side. So,
I was on your side.
Yeah, but I made damn sure I didn't ask a question or stick around to chat more with the quote unquote filmmakers. So,
it was such a weird night.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us to Nathan. Your number one. Give us that.
Yeah. So my number one actually is very meta because it involves Seinfeld itself. So if you remember from Seinfeld, they had these great fictional movies that they would go see, like Prognosis Negative or The Tunnel, all these sort of ridiculous sounding movies. But my favorite, of course, is Rochelle, Rochelle. And the tagline to Rochelle, Rochelle is young girl's strange erotic journey from Milan to Minsk. And there was an episode with Bette Midler in the musical version of Rochelle, Rochelle, and she made a long journey from Milan to Minsk, Rochelle, Rochelle. And so a few of my friends, when I was at the London Film School, we would sing that song to each other because we were all big Seinfeld fans and just joke around about it. And we even at one point floated the idea of we looked into airline tickets to Milan and then a train up to Minsk so we could have our own strange erotic journeys. And so this was just kind of a running joke in our group for 2 weeks. And this was near the end of our time over there. And then we had a producing lecture that was headed up by the guy who was the head of the school at the time. Now disgraced. Anybody who wants to really dig deep, they can figure out what happened there. But anyways, no, he was very erudite, but you could just kind of tell he was full of shit, a big smooth talker, fast talker. Not my favorite guy in the world. So, and now it was very satisfying for this to happen. So he was talking about how to pitch projects to big producers or whatever. So we go through the whole thing. At the end, we have 20 minutes left. And so he says, all right, so what else do you guys have in the pipeline? What ideas are you working on? What's something we could go over and develop? And then a friend of mine in the back raises his hand. And so he gets called on. And then he just kind of side eyes over at the other guys who we'd had this running joke with. And he goes, well, we've got Rochelle, Rochelle. and he's like, okay, what's Rochelle, Rochelle? And then my friend on my other side goes, well, it's a young girl's strange erotic journey from Milan to Minsk. and so the guy running the lecture is like, okay, that's great. And he turns around and he writes a young girl's strange erotic journey from Milan to Minsk on the board. And he's like, okay, what's act one? And so then we spent the next 20 minutes, the three of us improvising an outline for the film of Rochelle, Rochelle. And nobody ever caught on. It was then we were trying to contain our laughter the entire time, and we just made the plot more and more contrived. And at the end, he was like, "Man, this is some good stuff. I can't wait to see Rochelle, Rochelle on the big screen."
Do you remember what the climax was?
There were several.
The end of the film, she made it to Minsk. That's about all I remember.
Okay.
Yeah. It ended in Minsk. That's
wow. Oh God. You guys.
None of us took notes. We just let him write it up on the whiteboard, and then it was erased afterwards. So, because it would have looked suspicious if while we were saying it, we started to outline it on our own paper because we were just pretending we'd already done this work.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh man, I love that so much. And this makes this very hard because to award the 3 points at the Uber stare down, because Brian, I was there with you and I was experiencing that hot blood boil right there with you. But damn it, you guys know also I've done improv in my life, and again, Nathan, you know I love pranks and pranks against authority. And this is what that feels like. And so, Brian, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to give Nathan he takes it by a nose on this one. So congratulations, Nathan. You get the full 3 points of the Uber stare down.
I love it. Thank you.
And with that, Brian, I'm sorry, but let's go to your number one. Please forgive me. I love you. Please forgive me. Sorry.
Fine. Here's my number one, I guess. Okay.
Your number one.
All right. So this one's going to be a little bit interesting to bring it into the Seinfeld realm, because this is a situation that happened to me in around 4th or 5th grade. I was on a Park District basketball team, and we were having a really good year in our hometown there. So we were having a great season, and I remember finding, this is no point to the story whatsoever, but the best Nikes that matched our jerseys. I was able to find orange that gradiented into yellow Nikes that matched like the flames on our jerseys, like perfect. And I remember picking those up and then calling my friend Kevin and being like, they got them in your size too. We were on the same team. Like, you want these too? I'll pick them up. And we got the same pair of shoes. Like, either way, we ended up with these same shoes, and that was why we were flying high that season. So I had a feeling those were our Jordans for the year that really helped us push us through. But we got to the championship game, and we lost on a bad call from the ref. And we were heartbroken, and I remember parents arguing with the ref. Children were crying everywhere, and all of this is just echoing in the chamber of a gymnasium. just sadness and defeat. Did
your dad sketch the scene, or was he yelling along with the other parents?
Well, my dad worked the night shift, so he wasn't even there.
Oh, okay.
Which leads me to a side story where he did have to coach us once because the actual coach was late, and the one time he got to come to, they asked him, like, can you coach for the first quarter? And my dad was like, I am not qualified for this. But in this particular scenario, we're all crying because we lost. The other team's upset, are super happy because they won. But all these parents are yelling at this ref. Long story short, an article starts getting passed around a few years later of that ref in question being busted for child pornography on his computer.
Oh my God.
So it takes a huge turn.
Holy shit.
And then all of us start talking to each other again about, you know what? We did win that game that night. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we come out as winners after listening to this. This was just a whole thing. So wow. How is this a Seinfeld episode? It's more of a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode at this point, but
very dark. I love it. Okay.
I could see Jerry asking Kramer to join him in some intramural sports team at the gym if they're a player short, either squash or basketball or something weird. And then you got lots of Kramer falls. You get tons of Kramer being overly aggressive. It's a real good time there. But they end up losing on a technicality, and Kramer starts throwing a fit, and Jerry has to hold him back. And then I think to make this, what I'm getting at is child porn is really hard to make network TV safe. So yeah. I think that ref has to end up being involved in some sort of underground gambling ring or like a Ponzi scheme or something. And then Jerry ends up walking away feeling like, no, we're the winners here. We're the winners here.
Wow. Reminiscent of when Jerry has to do that foot race against that guy who then gets distracted. And
correct.
It's a very tainted victory, but being Jerry, he'll take it no matter how it comes.
Yeah.
Also, I just like to see Jerry play basketball. that would be really entertaining.
I mean, he definitely tucked his jersey in, right?
Yeah.
He'd have the whitest sneakers you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super high tube socks as well.
He'd be like Jordan. It's like a new pair every game, no matter what.
For sure. Yeah.
Very fresh kicks. Okay, with that, let's roll right along to our final top 5 moment of someone's life that should have been in a Seinfeld episode. And we're going to go to Nathan's number 2, as his number 1 has already been used in our epic Uber stare down.
All right, this is I have to give one very short background story to set the scene here. So I at a previous job, it was a very unpleasant job I had, and we invented a game in which you don't know you're playing the game until the end of the game. It was called And Now I Work Here. That was the name of the game. And so it would go like that. Like, I remember went and told a story about how I was doing some international travel by myself, and I found myself in a beautiful country taking a bus tour. And when, like, the second night on the tour, we were all in this little tiny town, staying a little tiny B&B, and I'd never met these people before, but we all became fast friends, and everybody's having a few drinks and karaoke, and it was a gorgeous little town, and the moon was shining bright, and this girl asked me she was like, we're going to go on a race to this stone bridge that was over the little creek that the town had been built around hundreds of years earlier. And so we run to the bridge, and the crickets are chirping, and there's shooting stars going across the sky. And it's just this beautiful, perfect moment. And she turned and she grabbed me by the lapels of my shirt, and she looked up at me and she said, I want to kiss you. And now I work here. So that's how the game works. So anyways, the story goes that I was on this trip. And so, like, we had that moment was a real thing that happened. And then so, like, for the rest of the week, like, I'm sitting next to this girl on the bus for the whole week, and we really hit it off. And she was over, she'd just finished grad school. She was over from America as well. We were having a great time, and you know, we did all the sightseeing together, took a lot of pictures together, just real fun. Then at the end of the bus tour, so like after 5 or 6 days, and I had joined a day late, which is important to the story. But so after 5 days, we're going back to the home city where it started. And everybody, we all had such a great time. We're like, all right, well, let's all go out. And even though the tour is over, we'll go out one last night together, have this big blowout. And like, even the tour guide was coming along. But I hadn't planned on, like, I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. So I didn't have a place to stay. So I was like worried about that. And then this girl was like, she's like, actually, like, I have a place you can stay, but like, I have to tell you something. And I'm like, oh, I don't like where this is going. And so she turned and said to me, she's like, okay, so I actually have an apartment here. And I'm like, what? She said, I've lived here for 5 years. And I'm like, okay, why have you been, why did I not know this before? Like, why has there been this ruse about you being from America in grad school? And this is all kind of strange. And so she said, well, the night before you got here, like, what happened was she had actually been going to grad school there in this country. And she had just graduated. So this was like her big saying goodbye to the country before she went back. So anyways, she said, you know, what happened was the night before I had joined, everybody was in the getting to know each other conversation. And she was trying to explain, like, that she actually had lived there. She was trying to just tell her actual background story. But then this group of people, like, they misunderstood and thought that she was just over on vacation. And then they started asking her different follow-up questions in that vein. And she was just too embarrassed to, like, correct them. And then it just kept going and going. And she's like, I was just so embarrassed I couldn't do it. And so she kept up this ruse for the entire week. And I was like, and so she's like, when we go out tonight, just don't tell anybody. I'm too embarrassed. And I said, well, why would you be embarrassed? Like, nobody's going to care, and we'll never see any of these people again, you know? And she's like, no, it's just, now that like every day that I kept it up, I'm going to be more and more embarrassed. And so she was worried more and more about it. So we get to the bar we're going to, and her roommates are meeting us, but she hasn't explained to her roommates the scenario. And so we meet her roommates, and she says, like, they're like, oh, you're this girl's roommate. Oh, cool. And like, you're her roommate back in America. And he was like, well, no. And then she goes, yep, and like grabs him by the arm. And so she's like, as each of her roommates shows up, we're having to somehow convey to them this this fiction that we've been operating under, just so there won't be some embarrassing conversation And so then there had to be stories made for these other, like her roommates who are there of like what they're doing there. And, well, we pulled it off, but I was just a passenger in this. And I was like, and she was a very, very sweet girl. And like, she genuinely just was trying to avoid embarrassment, but it just kept snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. And I found myself having to, help perpetrate it. And, I think that was definitely like, I think any character in Seinfeld it would have worked on, but like, I could see Jerry falling into this. And then Elaine shows up and he has to have that conversation where he tries to subliminally get her on board. And, it's all going well. And then George comes in and he just about gets it. But then Kramer comes in at the end and blows the whole thing sky high.
I'm shocked. I don't like... Oh, no. I'm here. Oh, you are. Okay, cool. Let's just continue on the tour. Like, what? That's all.
I know. It would have been such a simple fix. Like nobody would have thought less of her, and nobody. Yeah.
This is so.
It was actually quite endearing because she was a very, very sweet person, and it was, I don't know.
Okay, but like, isn't that a giant red flag?
Well, it's not like we got married or anything.
but like, she's so averse to just having a 10-second conversation. She pretends to be someone else for an entire week. Like, that's way more effort. Like, that's insane. Did you have your wallet the next morning? Like, did you wake up in a blank room that was just stripped of all its character?
No, there was nothing else strange about it. That was the only thing that was just an anomaly.
Was there like an inside joke on the tour of like, oh, she's from Pittsburgh, she loves a sloppy hamburger or something like that, where it created something, or it was just
no, it would just come up for because the tour worked where like people kind of would drop in and out for like a day or two, and so like where there would be more introductions, and then somebody would be like, oh yeah, this is her, and she this is her situation. She'd be like, yeah. So
it's not even the same group of people.
Well, no, there was a core group the whole time.
This is kind of impressive that she was able to keep the ruse up for so long.
Yeah, it was,
and then bring you into the fold.
It was a roller coaster.
How many more apartments does this woman have across Europe? I'm just curious.
I mean, I don't actually know. It could be thousands. It could be zero. So
what if this was a ruse inside of a ruse, and then her ruse of having the apartment? But, oh my God, it's like you got ruse incepted.
Yeah. Wow. Was she a good cuddler?
Yeah, there were a lot of those great like bus cuddles, like where everybody's like, because everybody was hungover the entire time, and so like there was lots of like everybody just the whole falling asleep, heads on shoulders and stuff. It was all very cutesy and romantic comedy-esque through the whole thing. It was a really idyllic week I spent.
Sure. And did you tell her the truth about yourself the whole time?
Well, she thinks I'm a secret agent in the British Secret Service. Yeah, I was investigating some very high-class espionage out in the countryside. Espionage. Yeah.
some white-gloved duplicitousness happening.
Yeah, so the sort of espionage that takes place when people use their real names at casino tables. That kind of espionage.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
You got to get your reward points, and you're not going to get him using a fake name. So
it's very true. Gosh, how? I love basketball. You guys know that about me. But Brian, your turn was so dark.
We didn't expect it either.
But I loved your enthusiasm about finding shoes that match your jersey. I'm going to give you 2 points for that. Nathan, I'm also going to give you 2 points for your story of assisting Hamdinger, who's a what's it, a how's it go, a real pulling the wool over the eyes.
It was a real bamboozle, I think.
Yes, a classic bamboozle. Oh man. And so give me just a moment here. You guys talk amongst yourselves. I don't know. Talk about dog names. Give me a second to tally here. Okay.
I've named all of my pets after sports figures.
So what's the best one?
Well, it gives me great pleasure that now Scottie Pippen and Tracy McGrady often appear alongside each other on ESPN First Take, because my childhood dog and cat were Pippen and McGrady. So they live on.
And I have tallied the scores here, and because of that Uber stare down, that was the difference today. Nathan, you take it with a score of 11 to Brian's 8. A warm round of applause for Nathan winning today's Uber Cinco.
Just like a parallel parker. Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, now it's time for the host to do their duties, the Fast Five. And so today is top 5 Brad Pitt hairs, I'm calling it, okay? Number 5, Meet Joe Black Brad Pitt. Now, on the film version, of course, on YouTube, we'll have some photos up, but it was bleached blonde. It was 1998. It was very of the times. It's flouncy. It's voluminous. There's a great deep side part. He's a classy young man in this film, and maybe it was a wig. I don't know. Okay, so number 4, Troy Brad Pitt. Back to blonde, baby. He's got so much hair on his head in this film, but none on his face, his abs, his back, or his buttocks. What's going on there? I don't know. The movie sucked, but also his hair laid like a lion who is just shampooed. I like that very much. Okay, number 3, Snatch Brad Pitt. This is a return to natural color form, baby. The scruff finally matches the hair up top. And he pairs it in this movie with a cool leather bowler. And who the F can pull off a leather bowler? Almost no one but Brad Pitt. Okay, number 2, Legends of the Fall Brad Pitt. This is the longest it's ever been in a film. There's luster to this. It's been weathered. He's outside a lot. He's working ranches. He's going to war in this movie. It's a mane. It's shoulder length. And the facial hair grows along with him throughout the film. A nice marker of aging. And his character Tristan encounters a grizzly, a bear, not once, but twice when one of the matchups. Spoiler alert. And number 1, Brad Pitt hair, Thelma and Louise Brad Pitt. This is a classy mullet. This is what rocketed him to fame. Again, great volume, not a surprise. And he has a little bit of a shadow goatee, but it's nothing overt in this one. But what you can see is the future and that beautiful coif, and boy, was it bright. So that was top 5 Brad Pitt hairs. Thank you again, everyone. That's this week's edition of Uber Cinco. On my left has been
Nathan Hennenfent.
And on my right, of course, has been our lovely
Brian Ernst.
And I've been Mitch Brinkman. And as BizBear always says, when you're seeing triple, pick the handsome one. Auf Wiedersehen and adios.
You've just listened to Uber Cinco, a production of UBK Studios. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your fine podcasts from.
If you like what you hear and want to support the show, please visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/UBK Studios. Every little bit helps us keep the lights on and the bill collectors at bay.
Keep tabs on us on all the social media at UBK Studios, and most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see that we really are just a bunch of good Midwestern boys.